Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery, and I'm your host, and this is episode 48. First of all, apologies for the late episode this week. It has been an insane week with just kids and schedules and life and all the things. I'm also recovering from a cold, so it's just been a week. But thank you for being here. I am really excited about this episode, actually, because this is the topic that I just cannot stop thinking about lately. I can't stop talking about it. And I think it's because it's affecting my life so much. And I really believe it's going to affect many, many of us, as well as a collective level. And that is how the energies are shifting right now, how the world is changing, how the systems are changing, and then more individually, how the energy is shifting that is going to support an entirely different way of living. And I'm going to explain why that's happening and how it's happening and what it means for you and all of that. But I think it's going to bring, hopefully, a lot of hope and encouragement for those of you who have just been going through a really hard time. And while it's going to affect different people differently, and it also really depends on kind of where you are in your life and what kind of lessons you've been through and how much you've learned and if you've done the internal work as well. So it's a little bit different for everybody, but I think it will affect everyone in some way, shape, or form in a very powerful way. So let's get into it, because I have talked a lot about 2025. I feel like I mentioned this in every other episode, just about how 2025 has been predicted to be an insane year for years. It was like, this was the year where it was almost like a 2020 in terms of like there's a before that year and after that year. And after that year, like it's very clear that everything really started to shift and change. And now we're really seeing that. But like everything, sorry, I'm pausing a lot to cough because I'm getting over this stupid cold. But like everything, anytime you encounter change, there is discomfort, right? Change always requires you to move through something, to change something, to shift something, to learn something. And that's very uncomfortable. And so many of us are just exhausted right now, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because the energy is changing and you are having to adapt in a way that feels unfamiliar and new. And we've reached a collective pivot point. We are like truly like moving over the top of the mountain now, where everything is shifting from uphill battle, uphill battle, uphill battle to, for many people, what is now going to feel like a downward just relief of like less effort and things finally manifesting and things finally coming in and all of that. And this is my favorite aspect of it to talk about, because collectively on a global scale, the main thing that you are going to see, and the main thing that we are already seeing, is the systems falling apart. Obviously, there is a ton of political upheaval right now, of political violence, governments being exposed, the government shutting down, all of these things. And it's not just in America, it is worldwide. The governments are being overtaken and new leaders are being put in place. And it's insane, really. It really feels like no place in the world is truly at peace. And that is because of this energy shifting. And if you don't understand it, which I'm going to explain, but if you don't understand it from a spiritual perspective, just logically, like history works in cycles, right? I mean, historically, you can always look back on the times where it was like tension built and tension built and tension built, and then something massive changed. That is the point that we are at right now, is we are like at the peak pressure point, the peak moment of tension where it's like do or die. Like we cannot keep going like this. We are at the point where too much has happened. Too much is out of sorts. Like it has to change. There is no other option at this point. All of our systems, our financial systems, our governments, our medical systems, our school systems, everything has changed so much and has been exposed. All of the weaknesses in these systems have been exposed so much where people are demanding change. And, you know, as a collective, we're saying we don't like this anymore. We cannot stand, we cannot take how things are going and how unsupported we feel as human beings. And we are demanding change. Okay, so that's like the big picture. If you take a step down from that, like if we're going from collective and then to more localized systems and then to like the individual. In the middle, specifically in the financial systems and like how we live our lives, really in all systems, it'll affect everything. But my brain thinks of it mostly in a financial sense because I think so many people are really struggling in that area. We are moving out of hustle culture. And I talked about this in my Patreon episode for like November energy predictions. But essentially, and astrologically, and I'm not going to get into the astrology part of it because I'm not an astrologer, but this is very much astrology based. But you don't have to understand astrology to see it happening in the real world. We are moving out of the hustle culture, the burnout. Basically, we have been in a time for the last 20 years especially, where what has been rewarded has been hard work and climbing the ladder and just like the grind, the pedal to the metal, the utilizing the systems to get ahead and just like that sort of energy. It was very Capricorn energy. And so it was like the more you hustled, the more you worked, like that's what got rewarded. And so that became built into our culture, right? And now we're kind of getting out of that where we're kind of seeing the issues with hustle culture and we're seeing the issues with how burned out people get, how bad it is for our mental health, how unsustainable it is for our lifestyles, especially if you have family or children or what have you. But for a while, but really heightened in the last 20 years, that has been what has seemed to bring people a lot of success and abundance and financial gain. We are moving out of that energy from a Capricorn energy into an Aquarius energy and a lot of other transits that I don't know enough about to explain to you. But the way that we manifest things and the way that we bring in financial abundance and the way that we bring in income and the way that we get rewarded by the universe is changing. We are moving away from hustle culture and we are moving into authenticity. We're also moving out of a self-service energy and into a service to others energy. Like the Aquarius energy is very much like for the people, for the collective. It's like if you picture the power structures in a pyramid where all of us normal human beings are at the bottom and all of the billionaires and the string pullers and all the people behind the scenes that tend to control literally everything are at the top. That system, that pyramid is getting flipped upside down over the next 20 years. And so that's why, like I was saying, we're getting to this like tension peak of energy because everything is about to shift. Like that pyramid is about to flip. It's about to just completely get dismantled because the energy no longer supports the billionaires and the trillionaires and the 1%. The energy is shifting to support the masses, to support the people. And so as we creep up on that energy, that's what we're seeing is those systems at the top, right? That top-down system where it serves a bunch of people at the top and it really destroys all of us at the bottom, that's crumbling. And for us, for, the normal everyday person, what used to be rewarding is not going to be rewarding, which is fantastic for us because that was a very tough energy to be in. And every type of energy, every season like this has its lessons, right? Has things that we're supposed to learn and do and gain from it. But this has not been an easy energy to be in where it was a lot about the burnout and the hustle and the hard work, etc. Now we are moving into an energy that will reward you for being authentic. You will be rewarded for calming your nervous system. So we're moving out of hustle culture where systematically you will begin to see that working harder doesn't bring you more success. In fact, what will bring people more success is showing up authentically. So showing up being true to themselves, being vulnerable, being humble, and also having a calm state, not being overworked, incorporating rest, taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, not burning out. That will be rewarded and you will begin to see these systems that we're so used to, like, oh, you got to work hard, right? That's what all of our parents told us. As long as you work hard, you'll be fine. As long as you work hard. Well, millennials saw that fall apart really quick, right? Because as soon as we got into the corporate world, we quickly discovered that working hard, in fact, did not get you ahead, and that much of the rewards really came from things that were outside of our control, like the economy and the jobs that were available and the amount of education you needed for certain jobs and the standard of living cost. And you did have to work insanely hard just to get ahead, just to make ends meet. You were basically asked to live in a state that was unsustainable. And so people got used to not having vacation time. People got used to working crazy long hours. People got used to working multiple jobs. People got used to not seeing their families enough. And we began to believe this is just how it is. This is just how it has to be to make ends meet. And that's not wrong. It was how it had to be. But it doesn't stay that way. It's not staying that way. And now things are shifting and changing. It's not going to be overnight, but just watch kind of how work culture changes. For example, after 2020, and I think just millennials in the workplace and now even Gen Z in the workplace, it's a mix of different things. But, we began to see obviously a lot of people really getting away from the 9 to 5, getting away from being expected to be in an office 24/7, especially if it was not necessary to be in an office. Having bosses that were really respectful to their employees and really saw them as human beings instead of just a robotic employee that was there to serve the boss. So already we've been seeing that. We're moving more towards that energy. And so that's something to think about, because if you are stuck in a job that you do not like, or if you're stuck in a job that feels like you just cannot take care of yourself, or a job where you just don't feel like you can be your authentic self, like you have a dream of doing something else, hang on to that. Don't let go of that. That is the direction we are moving. And now is the time to start thinking in that direction. Now is the time. Like, if you're going to make a career shift, if you want to step into a more authentic way of living, if you are burned out and you are tired of the hustle, start thinking ahead of where you want to be and what you want to do and what do you want that to look like, because that trajectory is going to become a lot easier as we move forward, especially in 2026, 2027. And I know this seems really hard to believe, because it feels like, how could I possibly find success when the economy is tanking and the world is falling apart? And that's just it. Like, that's the amazing thing is, again, the pyramid is flipping. So yes, the world is falling apart, especially for people at the top, and not only that, but yeah, maybe people who are high up in real estate or have made all of their success off of this like very corporate hustle, workhorse grind sort of energy. Yes, those people may be affected too. They are going to be pushed and pressured into living authentically. And it doesn't mean you have to change jobs. You might love what you're doing, but it means that we're being called to step into a different way of living, to step into a different way of existing, in a way that is much healthier for us. And again, in a way that serves the collective, the people. It allows us to rest in a way that allows us to be with our family and our friends, that allows us to have a healthy mental health, and that allows us to survive. Meaning we are moving into an energy where people will actually be able to live. And it seems counterintuitive, because you're like, wait, the economy is tanking and all this stuff is happening. How is that going to benefit? I understand. And quite honestly, I'm not the person who can sit here and explain the economy to you in a way that's, financially literate. But what I can tell you is that the energy never lies. This is a historical pattern. You can look back in history and literally track by 20 years, by 50 years, by 100 years, how these patterns repeat. And historians or people that have really studied these patterns can tell you this. I literally saw a video about this like yesterday, where he was saying like every 18 years, we move into a cycle and the financial system, this happens and then this happens. So this is something you can study outside of astrology, right? This isn't just a woo-woo topic, but the woo-woo, the astrology, the energy behind it is a huge reason why this happens, whether you understand that aspect of it or not. And so now, again, it's a collective pivot point where we're moving from a frequency of effort and survival into one of peace and receptivity and trust. Trusting yourself, trusting that you will be provided for, trusting that you don't have to overwork. And it doesn't mean that we're all going to become like couch potatoes and, that we're just going to do nothing. It's about doing things differently, doing them in a healthier way. It's about aligning with energy that supports peace instead of pressure. And so circling back to how people are feeling, we're all burned out, right? Right now, again, we're at that intense pressure point. Many, many people are feeling burned out. And it's kind of like an energetic hangover from years spent in survival mode, years struggling, especially the last few years, especially since 2020. We've been burned out because as the systems have collapsed, we're being asked to step into a new way of living. And that is, again, uncomfortable. Because quite honestly, we've been living inside of a matrix, inside of systems that have really built this illusion around us of how everything has to work. And so now as that shifts, we're seeing power structures and systems, the way that society has worked, which is what we fit inside, right? We place ourselves, we place our identities inside of these systems, and we come to believe, well, this is how the world works and this is how things are done. And when you start to change that, for a lot of people, that feels really scary because they're like, what's happening? I don't know how to exist in a world that doesn't work this way. I don't know how to exist in a system. It can be scary. You look around and you think, look at what's happening in the government. Look at what's happening globally. Look at what's happening, with the economy. And you might panic and think it's all falling apart. What's going to happen here? How is this going to affect us? And so I want this episode to be an encouragement to people who might feel discouraged by what is happening, and hopefully give you some comfort in the fact that it will not stay this way. It's like we are at mile 25 of a marathon. We're tired, we're burned out. We can't see the finish line yet, but it's coming. It's very close, but it's also really, really hard right now. But also, when you know you're close to the end, if you're at mile 25 and you don't know that you're at mile 25 and you don't know that the finish line is closed, you're going to feel hopeless, right? You're going to feel like this is never going to end. Where's the finish line? When am I done with this? And that would make you want to give up, right? So this episode is my way of telling you the finish line is only a mile away. And humanity has been detoxing, essentially, from an outdated frequency, an outdated energy. We're so sick of it now. We have been living in an energy that is based on scarcity and control and self-worth that has been tied to productivity. So it's almost like, to keep this analogy going, it's almost like we've been running this marathon for so long that's exhausting, and we're burned out and we're aching and it feels never ending. And now we're going to shift into an energy that's more like we're taking a walk through the forest and it's beautiful and we're still walking, we're still moving, right? We didn't stop. But now, instead of hustling, it's peaceful. You could walk a little faster if you wanted to, you could walk a little slower, whatever feels right for you, but you're not being asked to hustle anymore. That density is finally clearing. But while we're in that shift, it feels really exhausting. It feels exhausting, but what's actually happening is we are releasing that old energy and we are shifting and changing. And it kind of sounds abstract, I feel like, when I try to explain it. But you have to remember that your body is made up of energy. And so a lot of this is happening in a non-3D way that you cannot see. And so that makes it feel really abstract and really woo-woo because you're like, I can't physically see what is happening when the energy shifts. I just feel it. I feel this way, but I can't see it. There's no 3D visual for me to latch onto to prove that this is happening. But it doesn't make it any less valid. It doesn't mean that it's not happening. It just means that it's something that you feel instead of something that you see. And so this old energy is quite literally being detoxed out of your body. And we've talked about this on other episodes too, but kind of as that frequency raises on the planet, it's like anything that doesn't match that, right? The radio frequencies, the matching frequencies, anything that doesn't match that automatically has to be pushed out. Because you can't match, if you're tuned into a separate radio station that doesn't match the radio station, that you're trying to get to, you won't be able to hear that signal. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but you know what I mean? Just picture it like a detox. It's like if you change your diet, how many analogies do we need here? It's like if you change your diet and you go from eating a bunch of crap and a bunch of junk food to eating really clean, like fruits and vegetables and protein and what have you, the old nasty stuff in your body has to detox. I don't know if you've ever done something like you cut out sugar or you cut out some of your, something bad in your diet. All of a sudden, you might feel sick for a few days. Why do you feel sick when you're eating better? It's because that old crap has to come out of your body and it doesn't feel good while you're doing that. That is what is happening with this energy. That old energy, that outdated old energy, that lower frequency energy is detoxing out of your body. And as that happens, it feels like shit. It feels awful. It makes us tired and exhausted and emotional and confused and foggy. Like we're lacking clarity. Like, where is my life going? What's happening? Why am I tired? Why is everything not working out? We're moving from an energy of things not working out to things working out. And that doesn't look the same for everybody. It might be in one part of your life for somebody and another part of your life for somebody else. And it's important because remember, on an individual level, and I talk about this in other episodes, any of my episodes where I talked about life lessons, we dive deeper into this. But on an individual level, the way that the universe works is you have to move up through your own lessons. Like whatever lessons are destined for you in this lifetime, like whatever things you are supposed to walk through and you are supposed to learn, you can't get to the next level without learning the lesson that came before that. And so you might move up in frequency and maybe that lesson looks a little different. Maybe it plays out a little different. Maybe it plays out in a way that's a little less stressful. But regardless, that lesson has to be learned. So let's say, on your life path that you're supposed to meet a partner, or on your life path, you're supposed to, manifest this certain career or this certain purpose. You cannot, even in a higher frequency, you cannot get to that next thing unless you have learned the certain things you're supposed to learn, unless you have learned your lessons around self-worth, unless you have learned your lessons around financial scarcity, unless you have learned your lessons about, healing your wounds or whatever it is. It could be anything. But the point is, that's also a piece of this. So yes, while we are moving into this different energy, if you haven't learned your lessons, you may not get the same things that you would have gotten. It doesn't mean you can't get them. It just means you're not quite there yet. You have to keep working on that. But let me tell you, as somebody who is constantly analyzing myself and just trying to learn the lessons and trying to do the things and trying to work on different aspects of my life, the further I go, the further I get into it, the more I change and shift, and I can look back on previous years in my life and be like, wow, I handle that way differently now than I used to, or this looks completely different in my life now. It absolutely makes a difference. Things will come into your life. Opportunities will come into your life. You'll meet different types of people. Your career will look different. Your whatever it is. I can say with absolute certainty, those things get better as you learn the lessons. You get more positive experiences as you learn the lessons. It doesn't mean your life is perfect. It doesn't mean you'll never experience hardship. It doesn't mean you don't have more lessons to learn in the future. What I'm saying is it pays off in the 3D too. Not only will you feel better, not only will you feel more emotionally healthy, not only will you have better relationships with people, maybe you'll step into what really feels like your purpose and you'll be able to live with authenticity, but also those changes show up in the 3D as well. They show up in your relationships. They show up in your health. They show up in your opportunities. It's not just internal work. It's just that internal work precedes the 3D. And the good thing is the way that we are healing is now changing. Like a lot of us, we've been healing and growing and working really hard, striving all at one time. But the old model of healing through effort and having to work really hard to heal, right? That is also collapsing. Like healing won't feel like such an uphill. Healing won't feel like such an uphill battle. This new energy, this next phase, is about healing through ease, healing through allowing, healing through alignment. And so it's not just the career and financial energy. It's all of it. It's anything that felt like such a struggle before is now going to be so much easier to move through. And by the way, when I say is going to, or this is coming, this is changing, what I mean is in November. That's why if you're not a patron, definitely go check out the Patreon episode on the November energies where I really dived into why this is the month. This is the month where everything starts to shift. This is the beginning of 2020, basically. It didn't happen overnight. It kind of unfolded over 2020 and even 2021. That's what we're looking at. But this is the first month where everything officially really starts to shift, okay? And if we cover the more woo-woo stuff, like the cosmic mechanics behind this shift, what's happening on an energetic level is that Earth's frequency is rising. Again, we talk about this all the time. The planet's vibration is literally increasing. And you can also see this through things like the Schumann resonance. You can see this on barometers. If you have noticed that the Earth, natural disasters have become a lot more prevalent, like what happened in North Carolina and the other areas with flooding and the fires and the earthquakes and the tsunamis. The natural disasters have really picked up frequency in the last year or two, and especially this year. That's part of this. Scientifically, literally the poles are shifting. That's not a woo-woo thing. You can literally look it up. But the poles are shifting. So literally the whole planet, I think I'm saying literally too much. The whole planet is kind of shifting on its axis. So again, all of these things are intertwined, scientists see it one way and astrologers see it one way and, psychics see it another way. It's all the same thing. But regardless of what lens you see it through, it's very intense and it causes a lot of change. Okay, but going back to the cosmic mechanics, because the vibration of the planet is increasing, that means the dense, fear-based energies cannot anchor the way they once did. So again, we've talked about this in other episodes, but that lower frequency is an energy of like fear and low vibrational emotions in general. So those types of experiences, it doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again, but it means a sustained chronic way of living in these low vibrational emotions, these negative feelings, is not going to be a sustainable vibration to hold while you live on planet Earth. It doesn't mean you can't feel those feelings, but it means you're going to hit a wall with those, like being in that state is going to be harder because basically what it means is you're resisting it. The more that you resist the shift, the more that you resist the lessons, the more that you resist this new energy. Like people who have a really bad or really evil or really greedy energy that they exist out of, like a murderer or somebody who's just really corrupt, somebody who abuses other people, these people that live in this just nasty, low, evil sort of state, basically their lives are going to get harder. The energy, because it is moving upward and the frequency is rising, it will become more difficult for them to exist in that frequency. The energy is going to be moving against them. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm jumping all over the place because there's so many different like pieces that play into this. But I'm trying to get you to understand all of the different ways that this will begin to affect our lives. So that when you see it, you can be like, oh, that's evidence of what this is. That's evidence of the shift we're going through. This makes sense. Now I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it in the news articles. I'm seeing it in the weather changes. I'm seeing it in the scandals that are being exposed. I'm seeing it in the way that criminals are not able to hide in the way that they once were. Okay. And astrologically, this aligns with Pluto going through Aquarius. I talked about this in the November episode, so I don't want to just like reiterate everything, but the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, which is what we're moving into now, right? It was in Capricorn for 20 years. Now it's moving into Aquarius. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was during the American Revolution. And gee, if you look around, what kind of energy does it look like we're in globally right now, right? It's a lot of that American Revolution and French Revolution, that type of energy where the people are fighting back. So it's a long-term, again, we're going to be in this specific energy for 20 years. It's a long-term transformation that exposes these systems that have been built on control and hierarchy and manipulation. It's collective shadow work, basically on a global scale. We are unearthing all of the negative, all of the bad, all of the things that were hidden that needed to be worked on. It's all coming to the surface, just like it would on an individual level, but now it's happening on a collective level. The energy of Pluto is always associated with transformation and power and rebirth, and it represents deep subconscious forces. And so no matter what energy it's in, it kind of is linked to themes of renewal and endings and exploring hidden truths. It's just bringing all of that to the surface. And so while you're seeing that play out on one side, on the other side of that, we're seeing truth and we're seeing authenticity and we're seeing innovation, you know? So we're getting glimpses of the good that is coming while still watching the bad fall apart. And while all of that is happening, you see how it's like all over the place? I feel like you need like cliff notes on this episode because it's so much stuff. But while all of that is happening and the planet vibration, again, the frequency is rising. As that rises, again, as we are detoxing that old energy, we are recalibrating our own consciousness. People are becoming more intuitive. Time is beginning to feel accelerated. Synchronicities are more common. The universe is responding faster to your energy. Things will manifest faster. They will require less effort. And all of that is evidence of our frequency raising. I mean, like Jesus, for example, perfect example of this. And not the Jesus that you might know from Christianity, but the Jesus who was this extremely high frequency human being. Obviously, I don't believe in Jesus like dying on the cross for your sins. I don't believe that's what was happening at all. But I do believe that Jesus was in such a high frequency. Like he came in as like this master soul that was able to do things that other people did not understand because he was operating at such a high frequency, which was very uncommon at that point in history. And I'm planning on doing an entire episode one day with my sister on who Jesus really was, just because I think it's such a fascinating topic. But my point is, like, this is evidence of us collectively changing into basically better versions of ourselves. We are coming more online. Our gifts are becoming more online. Tapping into your intuition, into your psychic senses, that's going to become easier to do. I don't know about you guys. I have been experiencing more intense spiritual experiences. Like I've discussed before how I'll sometimes like see things in a room or, see things that I perceive to be spirits or, you could say ghosts. I don't really know that that's the right word in this context, but I've been essentially seeing way more of that. Like multiple times a day, every day, I'm seeing things in my peripheral vision. I'm seeing things move around, and not only just in my house anymore, but like outside or driving, like I'm watching things move and being like, what the heck was that? I'm also seeing synchronicities off the charts. I can't even tell you the amount of angel numbers or the amount of like weird coincidences that I see happen on a daily basis just in the last couple of months are so insane to the point where I almost feel like, am I losing my mind? Like I've seen this number 12 times today. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 times every day. I see constant numbers, constant just things, alignment, constant things that just stick out like a rainbow or a song that gets stuck in my head that it's like just eerie in terms of how spot on it is to my life. Or just all these little things that once you start really tapping into your kind of spiritual intuition, you pick up on these things more. They're very, very subtle, but you pick up on them more as you become more tuned in. Anyway, all that to say, that's just an example of kind of us coming online more. And so especially if you are already on this path, if you're already on this trajectory, you will notice this happening more evidently. Evidently? You know what I mean. But essentially, the more you align with your authentic frequency and the more you don't resist this, but lean into it and learn the things you need to learn and understand what's happening, the easier it becomes to magnetize opportunities to yourself. The more you resist change or, God forbid, cling to control. So people who are just really wanting to dig in their feet and feel like they need to control everything and feel like they have a hard time just allowing things, that's going to become more uncomfortable. That is going to become harder to sustain. And you are going to feel more blocked in this energy because you are fighting an uphill battle. You are pushing up against the energy of where things are going. You are swimming against the tide, so to speak. The universe is also making it kind of impossible to manifest through struggle. And really, control is a form of struggle. It's always been that way. We were never meant to control everything. You were never meant to control everything in your life. Everything you do is a co-creation with the universe. It's a co-creation with other people in your life. You are not an island. You don't control your life on your own. You can absolutely lead your own trajectory based on your decisions, of course. You have free will, but you'll never be in control of everything. And so again, the universe is making it impossible to manifest through struggle. Now, creation will happen through how you resonate with something and not how hard you push to get it. And so people who cling to the old way, the old push and grind model, will find that doors will be closed for them or that opportunities will evaporate because the energy is not supported. Have you ever heard the term, millionaires don't use astrologers, billionaires do? The reason being, people who understand how much astrology impacts your life do not forsake having this understanding or it's like having a financial advisor, having an astrologer to help advise you on what energies are serving you and what energies are not. This is why, because if you kept doing things if you keep doing things the way that you have in the past or the way that the old systems have supported, all of a sudden, that's not going to be easy anymore. And if you don't understand what's happening, you might think, well, why? Why is this not working anymore? And intuitively, again, because of the energy, intuitively, you will be guided in this direction anyway. If you paid attention to your intuition, if you kind of leaned into this intuitively, you will be guided in this direction anyway. So even without having the information, energetically, it's pushing everyone. It's encouraging everyone to move in the direction of authenticity. Like maybe lately you have felt more strongly that you should leave your job and pursue a business or just pursue, something else that feels more authentic. And so those who follow that, again, will see that they will find more flow, more ease, more alignment. Hustle culture was built on a patriarchal and scarcity-based framework, right? It's a very masculine energy to want to to hustle. And it's not necessarily the healthy side of the masculine energy either, at least not overworking, like not burnout. But what happened is these systems taught us to glorify exhaustion as proof of worth. It taught us that rest is weakness and that overworking deserved praise and respect. And so in order to gain these things, right? Because people want to feel seen as like hard workers because they feel like it gains them respect and it proves that they're strong and not weak. That, first of all, just isn't true. That is what we have been taught. That is the system that we have been in. That is not a true representation of what makes someone strong or what makes someone respectable. And the direction that we are heading in is a direction where what we will respect will be more purpose-driven and heart-centered and creative expression and healed people, people who are prioritizing their mental health and their emotional health and people who treat others with kindness. And many of the people who have not been respected in this old culture, like teachers, like therapists, many people who haven't gotten fair recognition for the work that they're doing because the old system taught us that, what was respectable and what was needed was these like hustle, these, the financial systems, Wall Street, celebrities, fame, or people in charge of something, people in leadership positions, like automatically, instead of part of a system where, yeah, we need leaders, but instead of being like one part of the system, those people were elevated to feel like they had more value than everyone else. And now, again, the universe is beginning to reward coherence over control, where we understand that we are all a very important piece of the collective puzzle, and that the more that you come from a heart-centered, service to others, authentic place, the more doors will open with ease because your energy matches your mission. And so what's really cool is that the most successful businesses and leaders in this new cycle will be those who merge strategy with alignment. Intuition will replace burnout. Alignment will replace aggression. And quite honestly, one of the areas that I am most excited to see this change, this shift in, is the financial system, because the global financial energy is being rewritten, redistributed, redefined. And money is evolving from a tool of control into energetic exchange, where money is more of an equalized, evenly spread tool that we have instead of this like precious, scarce thing that feels so hard to find. Because remember, like everything else, money holds frequency. And so when it's hoarded, it becomes stagnant. It stops moving. So when you have a lot of greed and you have people that kind of hoard money and just sit on it, or just keep it circulating within their own energy, where that maybe once had been supported, right, in the old system, where we are going, that's not supported anymore. In this Aquarius energy, money wants to be circulated. It wants to move because it wants to serve everyone. Again, the pyramid flip, right? Those at the top that have had all this success for so long, we're flipping that pyramid, and money is doing that as well. Instead of the money kind of being hoarded at the top, the money is now coming to the base of the pyramid where it is spread evenly among us. It wants to move. It wants to touch everyone. And so now when money is circulating through the collective, it's going to multiply because that is the energy that is supported. We are moving towards collective abundance models where generosity, collaboration, authenticity, service to others will create wealth that sustains everyone involved. And so again, it does matter where your individual frequency is, right? This is going to affect individuals differently depending on your own lessons, your own birth chart, where you are in your life. Whether you are fighting the energy, resisting, trying to control, or whether you are welcoming the flow, you're open to change. And so those aligned with the abundance consciousness, with the higher frequencies, will begin to feel more flow, even when there is instability globally. Because as the frequency rises, those higher emotions, those higher frequency emotions like trust, will magnetize your resources. Those lower frequency emotions like fear will repel resources. Does that make sense? So how you earn, how you give, how you receive will now directly affect how abundance and how wealth moves toward you. Now the universe will reward surrender and you softening and learning to receive, right? We've always been taught in this system that we need to give, to do more, to drain our own resources, to sustain, to survive, to do what we need to do. Now we are moving into an energy of receiving. And it's not passive, it's trust. It is trusting that we are allowed to rest, we're allowed to be creative, we're allowed to be authentic and receive what we need. Just from acting out of our intuition, not overworking, not being afraid, trusting that aligned energy attracts aligned results. Because we used to think if I push harder, I'll finally feel safe. If I push harder, I'll get what I want. And now it's almost the opposite of that. The new frequency says when I feel safe, things naturally align. When my nervous system is calm, I attract things to me. Peace and prosperity are no longer having to be earned. You get to just receive them. Oh, this episode is so long, but I want to touch on one more topic, and that is how the masculine feminine energies are operating within this new energy shift. Because again, as part of this huge change, and this is very obvious in our culture right now, in our media, on social media, the way that people are dating, the way that women are choosing to live their lives, the way that women are really pushing back against the masculine or choosing not to have children. Okay. And like I always say, this is not about hating men. This is about how the masculine systems and the patriarchal systems that have been at play for so long have been so unhealthy. They have been distorted. This is not an example of healthy masculinity. This is distorted masculinity. And so we're undergoing a massive healing between the divine masculine and the divine feminine and how those energies operate within humanity. So the masculine is being softened. Like the masculine is learning through, I hate to say it, but essentially rejection, the unhealthy masculine. And that's rejection of the systems, the patriarchal systems, and rejection on an individual relational level. The masculine is being called to soften. And it doesn't mean weak. Again, this is something we have to relearn. It doesn't mean the masculine is weak. It means the masculine isn't in a state of toxic masculinity, like the power and the control and the dominance. That is unhealthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity is strong and capable and service-minded. He's not demanding. He's not dominant. He's not abusive. He is strong, but he is kind and soft and servant-hearted. Okay, so that's what we're asking of the masculine. And I have an entire episode on masculine and feminine energies as well that deep dives a lot more into that. But the feminine is kind of being reawakened. The feminine has been suppressed for a long time. And I know there is some bits of collective, there are groups that really hate hearing this because it feels like what I'm saying is women are better than men. That's not what I'm saying. A healthy woman is equal to a healthy man. You know, you can have a healthy man and an unhealthy woman, and you can have a healthy woman and an unhealthy man, which unfortunately we tend to see more of that because I do feel like in the same way that little girls tend to learn a little bit faster than little boys, like you see that if you have children and just the way that their brain develops. And it doesn't mean we love our daughters any more than we love our sons, but it means that we function in different ways. And so in that same sense, women have historically and just energetically and physically and emotionally always leaned into growth and learning and kind of that spiritual path. They have always leaned into that more easily than men have. And a lot of that is our culture, right? Men have learned that they're supposed to be like strong and they're not allowed to show emotions. And there's a big conversation happening around men and their mental health, and that's very valid. But women are certainly ahead of the curve in terms of this area of emotional maturity and self-awareness. And where we see that the most is in the greater picture, in the systems, in the patriarchal history. So for centuries, because of that imbalance, feminine qualities like intuition and emotional wisdom and receptivity were devalued. They were suppressed. They were told that those things are not worthy, they're not valuable, and they're not respected. Now, they are returning as the foundation of where we're going. Now, what we're going to see is those qualities that women have always tended to embody more strongly. That's going to be elevated because the energy is going to shift into a place where now we see how important that is. We see how much that is needed. So the new system, the new paradigm is not about the feminine dominating the masculine, right? That's what we're getting away from. It's about integration. It's about the healthy masculine supporting structure and safety, and the healthy feminine creating and nurturing and receiving. It's a balance. Again, go listen to that masculine feminine episode where it really gets more into that. But that's what we're moving towards, is more of a balance. I know a lot of people talk about how we need a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. I don't think that's where we need to be. We need to be balanced, but quite honestly, when things are balanced, it will look more like a matriarchy because we're so used to the imbalance. Once things balance out, a lot of people will probably perceive it as a matriarchy because there will be more women in leadership positions. There will be more women who are finally being recognized for what women dominantly have to offer. And so that balance is essentially being restored. It's being restored in leadership. It's being restored in relationships where women aren't so disrespected within relationships. It's being balanced within creation itself. The world is remembering that the balance is important and that the polarity is not serving us. And so we're going to see this in relationships as well, whether it's a straight relationship or whether it's just a balance of masculine and feminine within a same-sex relationship. The energy will not support these very uneven dynamics anymore. We're being asked to build connections that are much more equal. The new energy will support mutual evolution, mutual exchange between partners. It's going to support emotional availability and communication and vulnerability, which means that people are automatically drawing in partners, attracting partners and communities that mirror that frequency. And we're seeing this already. So it's authenticity in romantic relationships, and it's also authenticity just collectively, right? We already see this kind of becoming a pattern. Online, on social media, we're seeing a lot more people want to get away from the highlight reel, want to get away from everything that is overly filtered, overly fake, especially for women, which again, because I'm a woman, I see more of this on my feed, but women are really fighting back against this idea that we all need to look like Barbie dolls. Like, yes, we want to look our best and we want to be healthy and we want clear skin and we want luscious hair and all of those things, and that's great. But there is a fine line between women wanting to feel their best, what feels best to them, and women being made to feel like they're never good enough because the standard is fake and impossible. And so we're seeing a pushback against that, of women stepping forward and saying, this is what a real body looks like. You have a uterus, you have hair, you have imperfections, and all of those things are normal. It doesn't mean that you can't do whatever you want to do to feel your best. But what it means is you're allowed to be human without shame. You're allowed to be human without being self-conscious. That is the energy that we are stepping into. And that's just one example, but it's a really good one. Anyway, this episode is stupid long, but I just, like I said, I'm really excited about this topic because my life is changing. Your life is probably changing, and you might not be there yet. And you might be like, what the hell? It's not changing at all. I'm still struggling. Yes, but not for long. So I hope this episode was super encouraging. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. If you're not a patron, there is an episode there, an extra episode every single week. There's also a second tier that is a membership where you can meet with me every month and we talk about different topics, and I do psychic readings, and you get the extra episode on top of that. So that's really fun, and I really enjoy connecting with you guys there. But be encouraged. The peace era is coming. We're in the last mile of the marathon. So just hang on for a little bit longer. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to leave a review. If you have listened to at least 2 of my episodes and have enjoyed them, please leave a review, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference. But okay, that is it for today's episode, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.